Whoa, that's some pretty cool wood grain. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. I've got a couple of cool guitars I want to share with you tonight. We're going to start with this one on eBay, listed as Guitar Gibson SG. Obviously, this thing caught my attention because look, we've got some awesome figuring in here. It almost looks like it might be a maple body, which generally SGs are not maple. So I'm just completely flabbergasted that we found that. I mean, occasionally you do find figured bodies even in mahogany guitars. And this is far from the craziest one I've ever seen, but it just has an interesting vibe to it. So naturally, I keep scrolling through these photos and then I see, yeah, we've got a whole bunch of ringy wood grain too. And then I see this strange photo. It looks like a completely different guitar that's stock photos, okay. And then I saw this photo. Oh my goodness, I was blinded by beautiful chatoyant effect. It's a fake Gibson. I trolled myself because now that I've seen the headstock, I actually came back to these photos and was like, oh yeah, oh wow, that control layout is so wrong. Like here's what an SG control layout is supposed to look like. Like these two knobs are supposed to line up this way and that obviously doesn't happen. And then we can also zoom in here. We can see the metric studs on it. That's usually a dead giveaway. And I thought something was looking strange about it anyway, with our pick guard not exactly being right, but people replace parts all the time. But yeah, we can see there's no fret nib, so that's always a warning sign, not necessarily meaning it's fake. But now going back through here, do you know what they've done here? It looks like they've put a maple veneer over the top. Kind of like what we see with the Epiphone SGs, where they put a sapele mahogany over top of it to hide the seam lines of the body and kind of give it more fancy wood grain. This one just appears to have that in maple. So that then explains why we see all the ringy wood grain back here. So I mean, as far as a fake SG goes, I mean, it's kind of cool. Now, does the seller actually know that they're selling a fake? It's too hard to say. But unfortunately, nah, I mean, maybe $300 if you really want it. Hopefully nobody bids $1,500 plus. Next up tonight, we have one from the Guitar Broker, advertised as a custom shop 1990 with a killer flame top. I will 100% agree with the killer flame top talk on this. Oh yeah, that looks so good. And I'm not normally a big fan of red guitars, but this one has enough fade to it that it works perfectly. Why does it have a TP6 tailpiece if it's a 90s one? That's a little bit unusual. You don't find that too often outside of like the Lucille models. But then you flip it over to the back and you've got some interesting wood grain back here. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's got something going on for it. The natural back with the red top definitely gives it a vibe. And then our headstock, very dusty. Looks like we've got a little bit of lacquer shrinking around the edges. It's either that or it's just catching the light in a weird way. But then I see the serial number, CS0086. It has a real custom shop decal on it. So that instantly put up some red flags for me because it was being described as in 1990, Gibson made a small run of ultra fancy guitars, essentially. Whether that's true or not, that's not what this is. This is a year 2000 Gibson because the custom shop did not exist until late 1993. Now you can still find something called custom shop edition or custom shop original starting in late 82. Those are a little bit different. So I was thinking it was maybe one of those, but that's not a big deal. Another 10 years, it's still a really cool guitar, but look at our fretboard. It appears to be ebony and it has abalone inlays. So that means this is probably some sort of a custom shop Les Paul Elegant would be my best guess. The Elegants, you can learn about them in this episode. They actually have a compound fretboard radius. That's pretty cool. But being a year 2000 would mean that they didn't have the big gaudy custom shop logo on the face of the headstock that's all inlaid in mother of pearl. So I'd be real curious to see if this one is chambered out like one of those or if it just kind of borrowed some of those elements because that's a really cool piece. Speaking of a really cool piece, here's one on the completely opposite end of the spectrum that we normally talk about. This is just a Gibson Les Paul Tribute Faded Tee. It doesn't have a crazy flame quilt top or anything like that. It's just a boring brown color. I say that with the utmost respect, but the unevenness of the finish is actually really appealing. It looks like you have like a little bit of a flame figuring line right here. You might have a slight chatoyant effect to this. I'm not entirely too sure, but you got a whole lot of wood grainage going on. It's rustic looking, but in a non-aged way. So in that aspect, I would actually say it's a nice win. I could see a Doom Chuggy Chug metal guy picking this thing up, putting some EMGs in it and going to town. You could even give it a nickname like Scarface, because it's got a random slash But ooh, then you swap over to the backside. You even got a little bit of fun figuring back here. You can see it's at least a 2-piece body. It doesn't look like the stain caught completely. It's either that or it's just been rubbed through. Most likely that. And then cool, this model appears to have a maple neck. Being a tribute, that makes complete sense. This one's just got a whole bunch of stuff going for it. And $850, it could be priced much worse than it is. Next, a viewer of the show sent me a listing advertised as a 1982 Gibson Les Paul Custom for only $2,800. That's a pretty good deal. What's wrong with it? So we got some sort of a brown walnut finish. I mean, you could find that on a Les Paul Artisan, but come to think of it, I don't think I've ever seen a regular Les Paul Custom from this era just have the walnut finish. That's gotta exist out there though, because they were using it all the time on SGs. And I suppose you could count the Brazilian Rosewood Customs on that, but it didn't get its color from the color, it got it from the wood underneath. So we've got some suspicions there already with our finish. It appears somebody has probably played with our pickups, maybe taken them off. But ooh, we've got witch hat knobs. That might actually be earlier. Typically you associate that with like early mid-70s. So those are either replaced or this is something different than they thought. But I think the reason why it's so cheap is somebody has engraved junk sick and skull and crossbones in it. I mean, there's worse things you could engrave on your guitar, right? I think this still has a certain vibe to it that somebody has no idea what that even means could still like this. And it also doesn't appear to be all that deep. It could just be in pen, just slightly engraved, but also inked. So you technically could probably take this to somebody and they could sand that away and just like give you a bigger dish carve and then refinish the whole thing. I mean, it's definitely a player because somebody's replaced our saddles. The neck heel is almost just non-existent from that angle, but you can see some finish has definitely been worn off here. Completely through, that's a maple neck, so okay, he's definitely within that 75-ish to 1982-ish. Looks like maybe a replaced jack. I'm not seeing a pancake body, so that firmly puts us between 76 to 82, but we could probably take an even stronger guess between 79 and 82. But all right, our serial number does indeed date it to 1982. Something that would have further helped us figure that out is the lack of a volute. So that's the first year where they start to not do that before they transition into mahogany. And oh my goodness, how many different sets of tuners do you need? So Schallers and cheapy style ones appear to have been on here. I'm not seeing any top ones for Klusons, so Grover, Schallers, and cheapies. I guess Schaller also makes one that does that, but okay. Kind of a cool black plating with a chrome plating for our knobs. And those knobs do look vintage to me, so it might be right. We kind of understand what this is. Now let's try to understand the story. So apparently this guitar was used by Joey Z, the guitarist of Life of Agony. Never heard of the band, but apparently it was used on their Broken Valley album, a tour, as well as the music video for Love to Let You Down. And even briefly in their documentary, The Sound of Scars on Amazon. So maybe you don't want to sand this down and just turn it into every other Les Paul custom that's ever been made. This one's got a little bit of a tail. We do have a little bit more of a story with this. It wasn't a pen, it was a Swiss Army knife. And we've got the JB Jazz pickups in there. Those are great, and they're firm at that $2,800. Do I think it's worth it? Maybe. I think it depends on who you are. If you're just looking for a player's grade custom, you don't care about originality, I would say that's pretty fair for a local sale. So if you're in the Blairstown, New Jersey area, you can check it out. Next up here is another interesting catfish. Look at this beautiful Gibson L6S, right? It's got the awesome wine red finish. It's got a little bit of a carve. We've got 3 knobs. We've got a toggle switch, output jack, the Bill Lawrence style pickups, harmonica bridge, stop bar tailpiece all the way down like normal. Oh wait, no. This is why I say always be leery of refinished Gibson L6S's that look a little bit off, because 9 times out of 10, it's one of the many rip-off brands that's just been refinished and reworked. These things are so much fun though. I mean, for $300, you can get something that looks very similar to the $1,200 guitar you can buy on the market, but it's got a different kind of charm and quirky personality to it. I mean, this one's a bolt-on neck, so it's technically trying to be the L6 Midnight Special. And it appears to have a mahogany neck instead of the maple neck that those other ones had, and the tuners aren't the best. But I seriously think this could be a lot of fun. And sometimes you'll find like Ibanez ones that sell for just as much as the Gibson variation. So when I saw this one for $305, it's like, yeah, I want to talk about that. Now the L6S reissue that Gibson did, those had the black dots, but the vintage originals did not have that. So that's one thing that you could look at right away to know if something's up. But remember, people can also replace dot inlays. Now check this out, a Johnny A signature custom shop. Johnny A models are honestly a little bit strange to me because there seems to be so many different variations out there and nobody knows anything about them as far as the general internet is concerned, because I get messages about these things all the time. They're like, what is this? What is this? Or they send me Pat Schmear's photo of him playing something very similar to one. So yes, I've been waiting for the very right one to document, and this one's pretty close. So we have this pretty crazy trans black top, but it's super quilty, but then there's just a dead spot right here, and it's like matched on both sides. It looks like some creepy eyes looking through. I can dig it, I can dig it. But then, oddly, we have a gold back and sides. I wouldn't normally think of that, but it kind of works. And not all Johnny A models have these really fancy inlays, but this one does, and we got the cool looking headstock. And if that's not enough for you, we got a black stinger on the back. You do find that quite often on the Johnny A models, but not every single one. And then the really awesome faux alligator skin case. You gotta love those things. So this one was just listed 2 hours ago for $6,000. There was a different really cool custom shop one that was green that I was kind of waiting for the seller to bring the price down because he was slowly doing it to the point where I wanted to buy it, but unfortunately I'd lost track of it and somebody else beat me to the punch. And to end out tonight's episode, let's take a look at this Les Paul Custom, listed for about $5,000 from a seller in France. Do you notice what's different? We've got a shiny pick guard in the shape of a Thunderbolt. I don't know. I like it. I really like wine red Les Paul Customs when they have been ultra aged like this. They have the yellowed lacquer. Otherwise, I'm not all that interested. So having these brass parts put on here really just kind of works with the whole vibe this thing has. And oh my goodness, I see it now. I thought that was a reflection. That is literally cut out. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit too gaudy for my taste now. I thought that was just a big, bright, shiny, reflective brass pick guard. But it looks like we even got these giant brass knobs. This is definitely a child of the late 70s, early 80s. And it's been played and worn in hard. But the guitar itself was made in 1976 that we can find out by looking at the serial number. Appears the tuners are still original. Definitely had a refret, so that's good. It can be played for many more years. We've got Schaller strap locks on it. And oh yeah, that thing's been played, but why do you need that? That's a Allen key wrench at the back of the headstock, but nothing on this guitar uses an Allen wrench. Maybe he just puts it on all of them so he can easily find it if he needs it for guitars that do need that adjustment. All right, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. And by the way, if you thought this SG that I was comparing that fake one to is cool, you can check the review and demo of that Guitar Center exclusive out here.